Hi, this is Joy at Red Pine Quilt Shop. Today we're going to talk about the Lori Holt seam guide. It's called The Seam So Easy, and it comes in a variety of different colors. I have it in the denim blue, and I also have it in the red. I have the red one out of the package. That's the one that we're going to look at here today. They are all the same except for the color, and it is the Seam So Easy from Lori Holt of Me and My Bonnet, and it is her seam guide. So the way that the seam guide works is it is a thin piece of template plastic, so you can see through it, and you will place this on your machine, and I will show you how to do that in a little bit. But you'll place it on your machine. It comes with some sticky dots that you can put underneath it to stick it down. You can use those for a while. You can peel it off, put it back on. When they get so they're not sticking anymore, you can replace these. You can get them with scrapbooking supplies. You can also just use washi tape to stick it down on your machine, and that'll work just fine. So you're going to place this on the bed of your machine. But let's talk first about how you use it. So the seam guide has both horizontal and vertical lines, and it gives you a nice grid that you can use to line various things up depending on what you're sewing. Now, when you place this on your machine, you want to make sure that you line your needle up with that center line, because then when you're sewing, you can sew from corner to corner without having to mark a piece of fabric. A lot of times if you're sewing from corner to corner, you're going to have to draw a line like that on the fabric. With the seam guide, you don't have to do that. You can take an unmarked square. So I've got a half square triangle here that I'm going to sew from corner to corner, and as long as I keep that corner lined up on the center line, I can sew from corner to corner without having to take time to mark that line in advance. So I save that whole marking step. So my needle is right here lined up at the center. I'm going to keep that opposite corner. I'm going to line this corner up with the line when I start sewing. I'm going to keep that opposite corner lined up. And then as I'm sewing and feeding it into the machine, as long as I keep that corner on the center line, I will sew right down the center of the square, and I can feed it right up into the machine, and I can sew a line right across corner to corner without having to take time to mark it in advance. Same thing for times when you want to sew a 1/4 inch on either side. Again, you can mark that on your piece of fabric, but it takes a lot of time to do that marking step. So with the seam guide, you can sew a 1/4 inch off of the center. So if you're going to make like a 2 at a time half square triangle method, you would sew a 1/4 inch off the center, and then you would cut it on the center. So for that, I'm going to use one of these 1/4 inch seam lines, and I will go ahead and line my corner up here when I start to sew, and keep in mind my needle is in the center, so that's going to position my needle a 1/4 inch off of center, which is what I want if I'm going to sew twice and cut in the middle. And then again, all I have to do is keep that corner lined up along that line as I'm sewing, and it will keep me sewing a 1/4 inch off of center. And I can go either way, whatever works better for you. But you want to make sure that you always start out with your needle lined up with that center line, and then those 1/4 inch lines can be used, or the center line can be used depending on what you want to do. So it works great for sewing half square triangles. It works great for sewing flying geese, snowball blocks, whatever you need to sew on the diagonal. It works great for that, and it also gives you some extended seam line-up lines just to help you feeding your fabric into your machine too. So you want to start out with your foot raised and your needle up. I'm going to slide this underneath. There is an opening that I will position over my feed dog area, so my feed dogs aren't touching the plastic, they're touching the fabric, and I will go ahead and get that slid back. Now, part of why she gave you a grid with both horizontal and vertical lines is so that you can make sure that when you position this on the bed of your machine that you get it set square. You don't want to have it off to one side or off to the other side, because then obviously these lines aren't where we need them to be. It has to be positioned square. So you can use those horizontal lines, I would probably try to find a spot that I could line up on the bed of my machine with that area where it goes from the gray to the white, and I have a physical spot on the bed of my machine that I know is square. I would line one of those horizontal lines up with that, so I know that I've got the seam guide laid and it is straight and it's not twisted off to one side or the other. So I'll use those horizontal lines for that. And once I have it slid underneath, I'm going to drop my needle, and I have my needle positioned to be in the center, and I'm just using my little red pine ruler. I'm going to flip it upside down because I don't want the grippy stuff down, and I will slide that over until it hits my needle. So when I have that slid over, so it is touching the side of my needle, I know that my needle is right beside the ruler. And if my needle is right beside the ruler, that is where I want my center line to be as well, is right beside the ruler. So I can use my small ruler butted up tight against the side of the needle to help to position my seam guide. And once I have it positioned, then I would go ahead and press down on those tacky dots. I would normally put one under each corner, so one under the four corners, and at that point in time I would go ahead and press those down so it sticks really nice to the bed of the machine and stays put. Now, if you have a machine like mine that has a top loading bobbin, you can loosen up these front two corners, leave the back two stuck down, but you can loosen the front two up and you can lift it up and get underneath there to do a bobbin change without taking it completely loose. Leave the back two corners stuck down, just pop the front two loose, change your bobbin, and then press those front two corners back down. So that is how to use the Lori Holt Seam So Easy seam guide. It will save you a lot of time in not having to mark lines on the back side of flying geese, half square triangles, snowball blocks, all of those blocks that we sew corner to corner. Thanks for joining us today.